No one noticed her at first. That was the cruelest part. She had been sitting there for hours, silent, unmoving, until her trembling hands finally formed two words that stopped a father in his tracks. Please, help me. The grocery store was loud in the way only busy places are, cartwheels screeching, children whining, scanners beeping, music humming overhead. People rushed past with lists in their heads and phones in their hands, eyes trained forward, never down. In the far corner near the customer service desk sat a small wheelchair, its paint chipped, its left wheel slightly crooked. In it was a girl no older than 12. Her hair was tied in uneven pigtails. One shoe was missing. Her jacket was too thin for the cold air blasting from above. She couldn't move her legs. She couldn't speak. She couldn't hear. And until that moment, no one had cared enough to look. Mark hadn't planned on stopping that day. He was already late. His 5-year-old son, Noah, had a fever, and Mark still needed medicine, soup, and something cheap for dinner. Since his wife died 2 years earlier, every day felt like a carefully balanced tower. One wrong move and it would all come crashing down. He grabbed what he could, eyes scanning shelves, mind racing through bills and doctor appointments, and whether Noah's cough sounded worse that morning. That's when he felt a small tug on his jacket. At first, he thought it was his son. But Noah wasn't with him. Mark turned. The girl's hands were shaking. Her fingers moved slowly, deliberately, like she was forcing her body to obey her will. Her eyes, wide, glossy, desperate, never left his face. She raised her hands again, repeating the motion. Please. Help. Me. Mark froze. He didn't know sign language, not really. Just a few basics he'd learned years ago from a coworker. But desperation had a language of its own. And he understood her perfectly. Hey, it's okay, he said softly, instinctively kneeling so he was at eye level with her. I see you. Her breath hitched. Her lips parted as if she wanted to say something, anything, but no sound came. Tears pooled instantly, spilling down her cheeks like she'd been holding them back for far too long. Mark looked around. People were everywhere. And yet, somehow, no one was looking. Is this your daughter? A woman muttered as she passed, not slowing down. Mark shook his head, still crouched beside the girl. No. He stopped. He didn't know what to say. No one had claimed her. No parent stood nearby. No store employee hovered close. Just the girl. Alone. He gently pointed to her hands and then to himself. Can you tell me your name? She swallowed hard and signed again, slower this time. Then she pointed to the wheelchair, to her legs, then made a small motion over her ears. Her face crumpled as she finished by pressing her hands to her chest. Mark's heart clenched. She wasn't just asking for help. She was explaining why she couldn't help herself. Okay, he whispered. Okay. I'm here now. Noah had always asked his dad why some people walked past homeless men without stopping. Mark never had a good answer. He just said, sometimes people are scared of what they don't understand. Standing there, Mark realized something terrifying. Sometimes people weren't scared. Sometimes they were just busy. He took off his jacket without thinking and draped it around the girl's shoulders. She flinched at first, then relaxed, clutching the fabric like it might disappear if she let go. A store employee finally approached, clipboard in hand. Sir, is everything all right here? Mark looked up, anger flashing through his exhaustion. She's been here alone. She's deaf. She can't move. How long has she been sitting here? The employee hesitated. I think she comes in sometimes. We thought maybe someone was with her. Mark stood slowly, keeping one hand on the wheelchair. Thought? He repeated quietly. The girl watched them both, eyes darting between faces, her hands hovering nervously in her lap. She signed again, faster now, panic rising. Mark turned back to her immediately. Hey. No. You're not in trouble. I promise. He signed promise the best he could, crossing his heart the way Noah did when he swore something was true. Her shoulders shook. A small crowd began to form. Whispers rippled outward. Phones slipped into hands. Someone murmured, "That poor child." Another said, "Where's her family?" Mark didn't care about the crowd. He cared about the girl gripping his sleeve like he was the only solid thing left in her world. "What happened?" he asked gently. "Who brought you here?" She hesitated. Then, slowly, painfully, she raised her hands again. This time, what she signed made Mark's breath catch in his throat, and would change everything that followed. Because she wasn't lost. She had been left. And as Mark realized what she was about to reveal, he had no idea that the choice he made next, one simple, human decision, would leave an entire store, and eventually an entire city, in tears. She hadn't been abandoned by accident. She had been returned. And the reason why would shatter the last bit of calm in the room. The girl lifted her hands again, but this time her fingers moved with painful slowness, like each sign cost her something. Her eyes kept dropping to the floor, as if she were ashamed of the truth she was about to share. Mark stayed perfectly still, afraid that even a breath might scare her into silence. "It's okay," he said softly. "Take your time." She swallowed, then signed. "Home. Mom. Hospital." Mark frowned slightly, trying to piece it together. "Your mom took you to the hospital?" The girl nodded. Her fingers trembled as she continued. "Doctor. Money. No more." The words hit Mark like a punch to the chest. Around them, the crowd leaned closer. Even those who didn't understand sign language could feel the weight of the moment. Silence spread in a way that felt heavier than noise. "You mean she couldn't afford your care?" Mark asked, his voice barely audible. The girl squeezed her eyes shut and nodded again. A single tear slipped down her nose and dropped onto her hands. She wiped it away quickly, embarrassed, then signed something else, something that made Mark's jaw tighten. "She said I would be safer here." Mark's chest burned. Safer. In a grocery store. Alone. A woman in the crowd gasped. Someone whispered, "That's monstrous." Another voice replied, "Maybe she had no choice." Mark didn't care about the debate. All he could see was a child who had been left behind because the world had decided she was too expensive to love. "How long?" he asked. The girl held up 3 fingers. Then hesitated, adding one more. 4 hours. 4 hours of cold air. 4 hours of strangers walking past. 4 hours of hoping someone, anyone, would see her. Mark ran a hand over his face. He thought of Noah at home, flushed with fever, calling for him from the couch. He imagined leaving his own child somewhere, trusting that the world would be kinder than he could be. He couldn't breathe. A manager pushed through the crowd. "Sir, we've contacted security and social services," he said stiffly. "They'll handle this from here." The girl's eyes widened in terror. She shook her head violently and signed fast, panic spilling from her fingers. "No police. Please. They take me away." Mark dropped to his knees instantly. Hey, he said, signing calm the way he remembered, pressing his palms downward. "You're safe. No one's taking you anywhere without understanding what you need." The manager frowned. "Sir, this is procedure." Mark looked up, fire in his eyes. "She's not a procedure. She's a child." The crowd murmured in agreement. A woman stepped forward. "Can't someone stay with her until help comes?" Mark didn't hesitate. "I will." It wasn't a decision he thought through. It wasn't practical. It didn't fit into his already overflowing life. But the moment the words left his mouth, he knew there was no other choice. The girl stared at him, disbelief written across her face. She slowly lifted her hands again. "You?" Mark nodded. "Yeah. Me." He signed stay and safe as best he could. "I'm a dad," he added, pointing to himself and then miming holding a small child. "I won't leave you." Her lower lip quivered. She pressed her hands to her mouth, shoulders shaking as silent sobs overtook her. The soundless cry tore through everyone watching. A store employee handed Mark a bottle of water, someone else brought a blanket. The crowd that had once ignored her now hovered, helpless and ashamed. Mark wrapped the blanket around her carefully, making sure not to startle her. She leaned into him, like she'd been waiting all day for permission to fall apart. "What's your name?" he asked again gently. She signed slowly this time. "Lily." "Lily," Mark repeated, committing it to memory. "I'm Mark." He spelled his name with clumsy fingers. She watched closely, then smiled faintly for the first time, a small, fragile thing, but real. Security arrived, followed by a social worker. They spoke in low voices, glancing at Lily, at Mark, at the crowd filming from a distance. "We'll need to take her in," the social worker said carefully. "Temporary placement." Lily's grip on Mark's sleeve tightened until her knuckles went white. "Please don't let them," she signed, eyes pleading. "I'll be good." Mark's heart broke clean in two. "She thinks she's done something wrong," he said hoarsely. "She hasn't." The social worker softened. "I know. But we have to ensure her safety." Mark looked down at Lily, at her fear, her exhaustion, the hope she didn't dare let herself feel yet. And in that moment, standing in the middle of a grocery store with strangers watching and his own life unraveling back home, Mark felt something settle deep in his chest. A choice. One that would change not just Lily's life, but his and his son's forever. He took a breath, then spoke the words that no one expected. "I'll take responsibility for her." The room went completely silent. And as every eye turned toward him, Mark had no idea how he would make it work, only that walking away was no longer an option. The moment he said it, reality hit him. Not tomorrow. Not later. Right now. "I'll take responsibility for her." The words still hung in the air when the social worker blinked, clearly unsure she'd heard correctly. The store felt smaller suddenly, like the walls had leaned in to listen. "Sir," she said carefully, "you don't know what that means." Mark nodded once. "I know it won't be easy." Lily's hands were frozen around his sleeve. She stared up at him, eyes wide, like she was afraid the ground might disappear if she moved. Slowly she signed again. "You don't know me." Mark knelt so they were eye to eye. "I know enough," he said gently. Then he signed the words he did know: safe, stay, not alone, clumsy, imperfect, but honest. Her breath hitched. For the first time since he'd met her, she didn't look like she was about to disappear. The social worker sighed softly. "We still have to follow protocol. Background checks. Home evaluations. Medical care. She has complex needs." "I have a son," Mark said. "He's sick today. I've been learning how to manage on my own since his mom passed." His voice cracked, but he kept going. "I won't pretend I'm perfect. But I won't leave her." That was what did it. The social worker's posture changed, not professional anymore, but human. "We can arrange emergency placement," she said. "Temporary. Tonight." Lily's hands flew up. "Tonight? With you?" Mark nodded. "If that's okay with you." She didn't answer with words. She leaned forward instead, pressing her forehead lightly against his arm, like she was afraid to hug him but needed to feel that he was real. The crowd dispersed slowly as arrangements were made. Phones lowered. Whispers faded. The grocery store returned to its normal rhythm, but nothing felt normal anymore. Mark called his neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, to check on Noah. "I'm bringing someone home," he said carefully. "A someone?" She laughed. Then she heard his tone. "I'll stay as long as you need." An hour later, Mark wheeled Lily out into the parking lot. The evening air was cold, sharp. She squinted at the sky like she hadn't seen it all day. "Pretty," she signed. Mark smiled despite everything. "Yeah, it is." In the car, Lily sat carefully, hands folded, eyes fixed on the window as if she were waiting to be told she didn't belong there. Mark adjusted the mirror so he could see her. "You're okay," he said softly. "We're just going home." Home. The word felt strange on his tongue. When they arrived, the lights were on. Mrs. Alvarez opened the door, worry etched into her face, until she saw Lily. "Oh," she whispered. Noah was on the couch, bundled in blankets. His face lit up when he saw his dad, then flickered with confusion when he noticed the wheelchair. "Daddy?" he asked weakly. Mark knelt beside him. "Buddy, this is Lily. She's going to stay with us for a bit." Noah frowned thoughtfully. "Is she sick?" Mark hesitated. "She's different. And she needs help." Noah nodded like that made perfect sense. He waved enthusiastically. Lily startled at the sudden movement, then watched closely. Noah signed high, the only sign he knew, taught to him by a cartoon months ago. Lily gasped. Her hands moved so fast Mark couldn't keep up. Her face lit up, something like joy breaking through the fear. Noah laughed. "Daddy, she's talking with her hands." Mark laughed too, tears threatening. "Yeah, she is." Later, after soup and medicine and awkward but gentle introductions, Mark helped Lily settle into the spare room. He laid out blankets, positioned her wheelchair, and paused at the door. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded, then signed something that made his chest ache. "Thank you for seeing me." Mark swallowed hard. "Always." That night, long after the house went quiet, Mark sat at the kitchen table staring at medical pamphlets and emergency placement forms. The weight of what he'd done pressed down on him. Extra care. Extra cost. Extra fear. He rubbed his eyes, exhausted beyond words. A soft sound made him look up. Lily was in the doorway, hands gripping the frame. She couldn't speak, but her eyes said enough. "Bad dream," she signed. Mark stood instantly. "Come here." He guided her back to bed, pulled the blanket up, and sat beside her until her breathing slowed. As he turned to leave, she reached out and caught his hand. "Don't go." Mark squeezed back gently. "I'm right here." And in that quiet, fragile moment, Mark realized the truth. He hadn't just rescued Lily from being left behind. He had been chosen. And what came next, the challenge, the sacrifice, the moment that would break open hearts far beyond that small house, was still waiting just ahead. The first real test came before sunrise. Before courage. Before sleep had finished healing anything. Mark woke to a soft, panic thumping down the hall. Not a scream. Not a cry. Just fear with nowhere to go. He was out of bed in seconds. Lily's door was open. She was halfway out of bed, arms straining, her body trembling as she tried to pull herself upright. Tears streaked her face, silent and frantic. Mark crossed the room in 2 steps. Hey, stop. I've got you." She clung to him the moment he touched her, hands locking into his shirt like anchors. Her breathing came in sharp bursts. She signed through the panic. "Pain. Can't move. Scared." Mark swallowed hard, lifting her carefully back onto the bed the way the nurse had shown him the night before. He adjusted her legs, added pillows, moved slowly, deliberately, letting her see every motion so nothing startled her. "You're safe," he said, even though she couldn't hear the words. He made sure his face said them instead. Her breathing slowed. Then her hands moved again, smaller this time. "I thought you left." That nearly broke him. He shook his head immediately and signed back, clumsy but firm. "Never." Her eyes searched his face, testing the truth of it. When she finally believed him, her shoulders sagged with relief. By morning, exhaustion had settled deep into Mark's bones. Noah was still asleep, Lily finally resting. Mark sat at the kitchen table with cold coffee when his phone buzzed. It was the hospital. The doctor didn't soften the words. "Her condition requires consistent physical therapy, adaptive equipment, and a full-time communication plan," she said. "Without it, her health will decline." Mark stared at the wall. "How much?" The pause on the other end told him everything. When he hung up, his hands were shaking. He didn't have savings. He didn't have family nearby. He barely had time. And yet, when Lily wheeled into the kitchen later and signed good morning with a shy smile, the answer felt unavoidable. I'll figure it out, he whispered. That afternoon, he took both kids with him to a community center recommended by the social worker. Lily's chair rattled over cracked pavement. Noah walked beside her, pushing lightly, proud of the responsibility. Inside, posters advertised aid programs, therapy grants, caregiver support groups. Mark spoke to everyone, filled out forms, answered questions, signed papers he barely understood. Then came the one that made his stomach drop. Emergency caregiver hearing, the clerk said. If approved, she stays with you. If not, she didn't finish the sentence. The hearing was scheduled for the next morning. That night, Lily sat on the floor watching Noah color. She signed carefully. If I go away, you can keep your son. Mark's chest tightened. That's not how family works. She looked down, hands twisting. I make things hard. Mark knelt in front of her. He lifted her hands gently so she had to look at him. You don't make things hard, he said, then signed the words slowly. You make things matter. Her eyes filled instantly. The hearing room was small and sterile. A judge, a caseworker, a representative from Child Services. Mark sat on one side with Lily beside him, Noah holding his hand. The caseworker spoke first. Mr. Carter has no prior training, limited financial resources, and has known the child less than 48 hours. Mark stood when it was his turn. His voice shook, but he didn't stop. I didn't plan this, he said. But neither did she. And she doesn't deserve to be passed around like a problem. He paused, looking down at Lily. She asked for help, he continued. And I said yes. If that's not enough, then I don't know what we're teaching our kids. The judge leaned back, studying them all. Then Lily did something no one expected. She lifted her hands. I try very hard, she signed, eyes shining. I will listen. I will learn. I just want a home. The interpreter's voice cracked as she translated. The room was silent. Finally, the judge spoke. Temporary guardianship approved. Review in 30 days. Mark's knees nearly gave out. Lily stared, not understanding yet. He knelt and signed quickly, tears blurring his vision. You stay. With us. Her hands flew to her mouth. Her whole body shook as she broke down, no sound, just relief pouring out of her. Noah hugged her without hesitation. Outside the courthouse, Mark felt the weight return, but this time, it was joined by something else. Hope. He didn't know how he would pay the bills. He didn't know how he would learn enough sign language fast enough. He didn't know how he would be enough. But as Lily reached for his hand and held on like she finally believed she could, Mark knew one thing with absolute certainty. The hardest part wasn't over. And what came next would test his heart more than anything before. 30 days passed faster than fear ever does. Faster than paperwork. Faster than doubt. And still, nothing prepared them for what Lily would do next. The house had changed in ways Mark hadn't expected. Not just ramps and schedules and therapy charts taped to the fridge, but sound. Or rather, the absence of it, noticed for the first time. Mark learned to knock with his knuckles against the wall so Lily could feel the vibration. Noah learned to tap twice on the table before speaking. Laughter became hands waving in the air, smiles held longer, eyes working harder to understand one another. They were learning a new language together. But money didn't care about love. The final bill arrived on a gray Tuesday afternoon. Therapy costs not covered. Equipment rental overdue. Medication adjustments. Mark stared at the numbers until they blurred. That night, after the kids were asleep, he sat at the kitchen table, head in his hands. He didn't hear Lily roll in, but he felt her presence when small hands touched his arm. She signed slowly. You look tired. He forced a smile. Just thinking. She studied his face the way only someone who had learned to read expressions for survival could. Then she signed something that made his chest tighten. Is it because of me? Mark shook his head immediately. No. Never. She didn't look convinced. The next morning, Lily asked, very carefully, to go with him when he dropped Noah at school. He agreed, though he wasn't sure why it mattered so much to her. In the school courtyard, parents chatted. Kids laughed. Lily watched everything quietly. Then she moved. She wheeled herself forward and tapped Mark's arm. "I want to say something." He frowned. "Here?" She nodded, determination sharp in her eyes. Before he could stop her, Lily lifted her hands high. She began to sign. Big, clear movements. Slow enough to be understood. Strong enough to be seen. A teacher noticed first. Then a parent. Then another. The interpreter from the courthouse, Noah's school volunteer, rushed over, eyes widening as she listened. "She's telling her story," the woman whispered. Lily signed about being left. About sitting alone. About a man who stopped. She signed about fear turning into home. Parents wiped their eyes. Children stared, silent. Then Lily signed the last part. "My dad didn't hear me. But he saw me." The interpreter choked on the words. By afternoon, the video was everywhere. By nightfall, the donations started. Small at first. Then more. Then enough to cover therapy. Equipment. Classes. Mark sat frozen at the table as emails poured in, from therapists, advocates, strangers offering help. Lily watched, hands clasped, nervous. "Did I do wrong?" She sighed. Mark dropped to his knees in front of her, tears spilling freely. "You saved us," he said, then signed it with shaking hands. At the 30-day review, the judge didn't hesitate. "Permanent guardianship granted." Lily didn't cry this time. She smiled. Later that night, as Mark tucked Noah in, his son whispered, "Daddy?" "Yeah, buddy?" "No matter what, Lily's my sister, right?" Mark swallowed hard. "Yeah. She is." In the hallway, Lily waited. She signed one last thing before bed. "You didn't walk away." Mark knelt and hugged her carefully, fiercely. "No," he said. "I stayed. And sometimes, that's all it takes to change a life."